Ilara drove into Havenwood on a Tuesday, just as the last amber rays of a late September sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised plum and soft rose. The town, nestled snugly against the churning slate gray of the North Sea, was exactly as the online listing had promised: quaint, quiet, and seemingly untouched by the hurried pulse of the modern world. Her small car, packed with boxes and the ghosts of a life she was determined to leave behind, crunched gravel as she pulled up to the cottage she'd rented for the next 6 months. The cottage, named Sea-Watch by some long-ago owner, was a pocket of sun-dappled cream and sea-weathered blue trim, perched on a gentle slope overlooking the main street, and, beyond it, the restless expanse of the ocean. A small, slightly overgrown garden, full of late-blooming hydrangeas and the skeletal remains of what looked like lavender, offered a fragrant welcome. Ilara breathed it in, a mix of salt and damp earth and something distinctly floral, and felt a tiny, fragile tendril of hope unfurl in her chest. Hope had been a scarce commodity for her lately. For the past year, her life had felt like a camera lens stubbornly refusing to focus, everything blurred and indistinct. The vibrant world she once saw through her viewfinder, the world she captured and transformed into art, had retreated behind a veil of gray. Her photography studio, once a bustling hub of creativity, now felt like a mausoleum of forgotten dreams. The breakup, sudden and sharp as a broken shard of glass, had only solidified the feeling of being adrift. So, she'd packed up her essentials, her most cherished camera, and a handful of half-formed intentions, and pointed her car north until the sea air promised a fresh start. Unlocking the front door, Ilara was met with the scent of old wood, beeswax, and a faint whisper of salt. The interior was cozy, if a little dated: chintz armchairs, a sturdy pine dining table, and a small, surprisingly well-stocked bookshelf. A wide window in the living room framed a perfect view of the fishing boats, bobbing gently in the harbor, their masts like skeletal fingers against the darkening sky. She set her camera bag down first, almost reverently, on the polished wooden floorboards. It felt like an anchor, a promise of the artist she still hoped to be. The first few days in Havenwood passed in a gentle blur of unpacking grocery shopping at the surprisingly well-stocked local market, and long, solitary walks along the pebbled beach. Ilara found a rhythm quickly, rising with the sun, making strong coffee, and then letting her feet guide her. She explored the winding streets, admiring the brightly painted houses, the tiny art galleries, and the one bustling cafe, the Salty Bean, where the aroma of roasting coffee beans mingled with the scent of freshly baked scones. She kept her camera mostly in its bag, content to observe. Her artist's eye, long dormant, was slowly reawakening, noticing the way the light caught the weathered planks of the old pier, the intricate patterns of seaweed left by the tide, the stoic faces of the local fishermen mending their nets. There was a quiet beauty here, a slow, enduring kind of loveliness that didn't demand attention, but rather invited gentle contemplation. On her fourth morning, armed with a sketchpad and a thermos of lukewarm tea, Ilara decided to explore the less-traveled lane that branched off the main street, away from the harbor and towards the older part of town. The air was crisp, hinting at the true arrival of autumn, and the leaves on the ancient oak trees lining the lane had begun to turn, blazing in fiery reds and burnished golds. The lane was quieter, lined with older buildings, some residential, some seemingly disused. Then she saw it. A small, unassuming storefront, its window displaying an array of beautifully crafted wooden boxes, a delicate rocking horse, and a polished, antique-looking desk lamp. A hand-carved sign, elegant in its simplicity, hung above the door: Liam's Woodworks, Restorations and Custom Pieces. Curiosity, a spark she hadn't felt in months, tugged at her. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, and a tiny bell above her head tinkled softly, announcing her presence. The interior of Liam's Woodworks was a symphony for the senses. The air was thick with the warm, comforting scent of sawdust, linseed oil, and old wood. Sunlight streamed through a large, grimy window at the back, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air and highlighting the rich grain of the various wood pieces scattered around. The shop wasn't cluttered, but rather thoughtfully arranged, a testament to someone who respected their craft. There were unfinished chairs, a grand old armoire waiting for a new lease on life, and shelves laden with smaller, intricate items: carved birds, polished bowls, intricately inlaid boxes. Each piece seemed to tell a story. Ilara found herself mesmerized, running her fingers lightly over the smooth, cool surface of a walnut table, admiring the precise joinery, the careful attention to detail. This wasn't just someone working with wood. This was someone in conversation with it. "Can I help you?" A voice, deep and warm like aged oak, startled her. She turned, a blush creeping up her neck. She hadn't realized anyone else was there. Standing in a doorway at the back, wiping his hands on a sawdust-laden apron, was a man who seemed to embody the very essence of his workshop. He was tall, with broad shoulders that strained slightly against a faded blue shirt. His hair, the color of rich earth, was a little unruly, falling across a forehead smudged with sawdust. But it was his eyes that truly captured her attention, a startlingly clear shade of hazel, crinkling at the corners as he offered a small, polite smile. They held an unassuming kindness, a quiet intelligence. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Ilara stammered, feeling suddenly clumsy. "I didn't realize anyone was here. I was just admiring your work. It's beautiful." He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "No need to apologize. I get that a lot. People wander in, drawn by the smell of sawdust, I suppose." He gestured around the shop with a calloused hand. "Everything here has a story, or is waiting for one. Are you looking for anything in particular?" "Not really," she admitted, feeling a little more at ease under his gentle gaze. "I just moved to Havenwood a few days ago. Ilara Van Story." She extended a hand. He took it, his grip firm but gentle, his skin warm and slightly rough. "Liam O'Connell, welcome to Havenwood, Ilara Vance." His voice lingered on her name, making it sound more melodic than she'd ever thought possible. "What brought you to our quiet corner of the world?" "A change of scenery," she replied vaguely, pulling her hand back but feeling the warmth of his linger. "I'm a photographer, or I used to be. I'm hoping to find some inspiration here." She gestured with her chin towards the large window at the back of the shop. "You certainly have a lovely light source in here." Liam followed her gaze. "It's my favorite feature. Good light is essential, whether you're shaping wood or capturing it, I imagine." He leaned against a workbench, his posture relaxed, making her feel less like an intruder and more like a welcome guest. "So a photographer, eh? I've always admired people who can see the world in frames. Everything just looks like a pile of wood to me until I get my hands on it." He grinned, a genuine easy smile that lit up his eyes. Ilara found herself smiling back, a genuine smile that felt unfamiliar on her face. "It's a different kind of seeing, I suppose. You see the potential in the grain, the structure. I see the light, the composition, the fleeting moment." She paused, feeling a flicker of that old passion. "There's a beautiful texture to this shop, Liam. All the different woods, the tools, the way the light falls. It's very photographable." "Is that a word?" he teased gently. "It is now," she declared, a playful spark in her eyes. "Have you always been a woodworker?" "Since I was old enough to hold a chisel without taking off a finger," he said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "My grandfather had this shop before me. I grew up in the back, surrounded by the smell of oak and pine. It just felt natural to carry it on." He swept a hand through his hair, dislodging a fresh sprinkle of sawdust. "It's honest work, and rewarding, bringing something old back to life, or making something new that will hopefully last generations." Ilara nodded, understanding. "That's how I feel about photographs, capturing a moment, preserving it, giving it a kind of immortality." She looked around the shop again, her gaze lingering on a small, intricately carved wooden bird perched on a shelf. "Do you ever carve small things like this, or mostly furniture?" "A bit of everything," he answered, following her gaze. "The smaller pieces are often just for my own enjoyment, or gifts. Keeps the hands limber for the bigger jobs." He picked up the bird, a robin, its breast a warm, natural red in the wood grain. "This one was a trial piece. Thought I saw a robin in that scrap of cherry wood." He held it out to her. Ilara took it carefully, her fingers brushing his again. The wood was incredibly smooth, warm from his hand, and perfectly balanced. The robin felt alive in her palm. "It's exquisite, Liam. You really brought it to life." "Just helped it find its way out of the wood," he corrected modestly. "Do you carve?" "No, not at all. My hands are good with a camera, not a chisel." She laughed softly. "But I appreciate the artistry. There's a quiet strength in something made with such care." They talked for a while longer, about Havenwood, about the changing seasons, about the unexpected joy of finding beauty in the everyday. Liam was easy to talk to, a good listener who asked thoughtful questions and offered insightful comments without being intrusive. He had a calm, steady presence that Alara found surprisingly comforting. It had been a long time since she'd felt so at ease in someone's company, especially a stranger's. Eventually, the afternoon sun began to wane, casting longer shadows across the shop floor. Alara realized she'd been there for almost an hour, completely lost in conversation. "I should probably let you get back to your work," she said, reluctantly handing the wooden robin back to him. "No rush," he said, taking the bird and placing it back on its shelf. "It's been a pleasure, Alara. Not every day I get to talk about art and immortality with a new face in town." His eyes held a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher, a gentle warmth that made her stomach do a little flip. "The pleasure was all mine, Liam," she replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips once more. "Thank you for letting me intrude." "Anytime," he said, walking her to the door. As she stepped out, the little bell tinkled again, and he added, "Do you have a camera with you?" She patted her shoulder bag where her trusty Canon lay. "Always." "Good," he said, his smile widening. "Havenwood has a way of revealing its secrets slowly. You'll find plenty to capture here." Alara walked back to her cottage, her steps lighter than they had been in months. The scent of sawdust and wood oil seemed to cling to her, a pleasant reminder of her unexpected encounter. Liam O'Connell. His name felt solid, like the wood he worked with. There was a quiet strength about him, a groundedness that she found immensely appealing. He wasn't flashy or boisterous, just kind and observant. And his eyes. She found herself sketching that evening, something she hadn't done consistently in ages. Not the grand landscapes she usually sought, but the interior of his shop, the way the light fell on an unfinished chair, the careful arrangement of his tools, the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. She even tried to capture the feeling of him, the quiet intensity in his hazel eyes, the curve of his smile. The sketches were rough, imperfect, but the act of creating, of UXing again, felt like a breath of fresh air after a long dive underwater. The next few days, Alara found herself subconsciously altering her walking routes, hoping for another glimpse of Liam's shop, perhaps even him. She told herself it was purely for inspiration, for the interesting textures and light. But deep down, a different kind of curiosity was stirring. She bought fresh paints and canvases from the small art supply shop she discovered near the harbor, even though her primary medium was photography. The idea of capturing the subtle shades of the Havenwood sky, the vibrant greens of the moss-covered rocks, felt like a necessary counterpoint to her internal world, which often felt muted. One afternoon, while she was setting up her easel on the small, windswept bluff overlooking the harbor, a familiar voice called out, "Trying your hand at a different kind of lens, Alara?" She turned to see Liam, walking along the coastal path, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. He wore a heavy wool sweater against the crisp sea air, and his hair was wind-tousled. He looked even more at home in this rugged landscape than he did amidst his polished wood. "Liam, hello," she replied, feeling a familiar warmth spread through her. "Just experimenting. Sometimes the world demands more than a single frame." She gestured to her half-finished painting, a tumultuous sky over a choppy sea. "It's harder than it looks, capturing all this movement with a brush." He walked closer, stopping a respectful distance from her easel. His gaze swept over the painting, discerning and appreciative. "You've captured the mood, though. I can almost feel the wind coming off the water. It's good to see you creating again." "How did you know I wasn't before?" she asked, a little surprised by his perceptiveness. He shrugged, a small, self-effacing gesture. "You mentioned you used to be a photographer, and you had that look in your eyes, the one artists get when they're searching for something, but haven't quite found it yet, or when they're remembering what it felt like to create." He paused, then added softly, "It's a look I know well." His words struck a chord deep within her. He saw her, truly saw her, in a way few people ever had. It was comforting and a little unsettling. "What's in the bag?" she asked, changing the subject slightly, gesturing to the canvas tote. "Just some supplies," he said, lifting the bag slightly. "I'm heading out to the old lighthouse to do some repairs on the keeper's cottage. The wind plays havoc with the window frames out there." He pointed to a distant, stark white lighthouse standing sentinel on a rocky outcrop. Figured I'd grab some lunch at the Salty Bean first. Want to join me? We could talk about the challenges of capturing the sea, or the stubbornness of old wood. Alara hesitated for only a moment. Her usual instinct was to decline, to retreat into her solitary world. But there was something about Liam, his quiet invitation, his understanding gaze, that made her want to say yes. "I'd like that very much, Liam," she said, a genuine smile lighting up her face. She carefully put the lid back on her paint palette. "Let me just pack up." As they walked towards the Salty Bean, the wind whipping their hair and bringing the bracing scent of the sea to their nostrils, Alara felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Conversation flowed easily between them. He told her about the history of the lighthouse, about the generations of keepers who had lived there, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of the sea. She told him about her journey to Havenwood, omitting the painful details of her past, but conveying her desire for a fresh start, for a renewed sense of purpose. Inside the cozy warmth of the Salty Bean, with the comforting clatter of mugs and the murmur of local voices, they settled into a corner booth. Liam ordered a robust fisherman's stew, while Alara opted for a mushroom and brie quiche and a steaming mug of Earl Grey tea. "So, what kind of photography did you do?" he asked, once their food had arrived, his eyes twinkling over the rim of his mug. "Mostly fine art photography," she explained, stirring her tea. "I loved capturing landscapes, cityscapes, the interplay of light and shadow, emotion in everyday scenes. But I also did some portraiture, especially for artists and creatives, helping them see the beauty in themselves, in their work." She sighed softly. It felt meaningful. "And it doesn't now?" he prompted gently, his gaze unwavering. Alara looked down at her quiche, tracing the pattern on the plate with her fork. "It lost its spark. Everything just started to look flat, uninteresting. The colors faded. It was like I was looking at the world through a gray filter." She finally met his eyes, a vulnerability she rarely showed in public. "It's why I came here, to try and find the color again." Liam reached across the table, his fingers gently touching her hand. It wasn't a romantic gesture, but one of pure, unadulterated empathy. "It'll come back, Alara. Creativity isn't a faucet you can just turn off and on. It's a well, and sometimes it needs time to replenish, especially after life takes a toll." He didn't pry, didn't ask what life takes a toll meant, and Alara was profoundly grateful for his silent understanding. "I hope so," she whispered, her voice a little thick. She squeezed his hand gently in return before pulling hers back. "Thank you, Liam." He smiled, a soft, reassuring smile that reached his eyes. "You're welcome. And from what I saw on that bluff, the colors are already starting to return." They talked for another hour, moving from the personal to the general, discussing the challenges of small-town life, the eccentricities of some of the Havenwood locals, and their shared appreciation for things made with care and intention. Alara found herself laughing more easily than she had in months, enjoying his dry wit and the warmth of his company. She learned that Liam was a surprisingly talented amateur astronomer, spending clear nights with his telescope in his backyard, charting constellations. He, in turn, was fascinated by her stories of traveling to capture unique landscapes, even the brief, often frustrating tales of artistic struggle. When it was time for Liam to head to the lighthouse, Alara walked with him as far as the edge of town, where the path diverged. The afternoon sun was already beginning its descent, casting long golden shadows across the fields. "Thanks for lunch, Liam, and for the company," she said genuinely. "My pleasure, Alara. Truly," he replied, his hazel eyes holding hers. "It was good to talk, and good to know there's another creative soul in Havenwood." He paused, then added, "If you ever want to see the stars through a proper telescope, just let me know. Havenwood has some of the clearest skies on the coast." The invitation hung in the air, a gentle suggestion of future possibilities. Alara felt a flutter in her stomach, a nervous, excited anticipation. I might just take you up on that, Liam," she said, a shy smile playing on her lips. "I hope you do," he said, his smile mirroring hers. He gave her a small nod, then turned and began walking down the winding coastal path towards the distant lighthouse, his figure growing smaller against the vast expanse of the sea and sky. Alara watched him go, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the setting sun. She walked back towards her cottage, the sea breeze carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and salt. The world around her seemed a little brighter, the colors a little richer, the sounds a little clearer. She pulled out her camera, something she hadn't done on her walks for days, and brought it to her eye. The light, the trees, the distant glint of the lighthouse, they all seemed to resolve into sharp, beautiful focus. The gray filter was lifting, and a quiet whisper, a promise of something new, seemed to be carried on the autumn wind. She felt a lightness she hadn't known she was missing, a burgeoning sense of connection to this new place, and to the kind, quiet man who worked with wood and saw the stars. The next chapter of her story, she realized, was just beginning to unfold. The next chapter of her story, she realized, was just beginning to unfold. Elara slowly lowered the camera, her fingers still tingling from the cool metal. The world around her, previously a muted wash, now hummed with an almost electric vibrancy. The sky above was a tapestry of soft grays and bruised purples, each cloud distinct, each wisp of light a painter's stroke. The leaves on the wind-gnarled trees along the cliff edge were no longer just autumn colors but individual jewels of ochre, russet, and deep, shimmering gold. Even the air felt different, crisper, cleaner, carrying the sharp tang of salt and damp earth. She took a deep, shuddering breath, a smile unfurling on her lips without her conscious command. It wasn't just that the filter had lifted. It was as if she had been seeing the world through a pane of frosted glass, and someone had just wiped it clean. She turned to the man beside her, her gaze for the first time, truly Yishiaim. His profile was strong, etched by the elements, his hair a darker shade of the autumn leaves, swept back by the wind. The fine lines around his eyes, which she now noticed were a surprising shade of deep, calm hazel, crinkled as he watched the distant ocean. He wasn't overtly handsome in a conventional way, but there was a quiet strength, a profound kindness in his posture, in the way his hands rested easily in the pockets of his worn jacket. He emanated a sense of grounded tranquility that Elara suddenly found deeply comforting. He sensed her gaze and slowly turned his head. His eyes met hers, and Elara felt a peculiar jolt, a warmth spreading through her chest. There was a question in his gaze, a gentle curiosity, as if he was trying to read the transformation he clearly perceived in her. "It's beautiful," she managed, her voice a little breathy. She gestured vaguely at the vista, but her eyes kept returning to him. "Truly beautiful." A slow smile, soft and genuine, touched his lips, deepening the crinkles around his eyes. "It always is at this time of year," he said, his voice a low rumble like distant waves. "But I think you're seeing it differently now, aren't you?" Elara nodded, a blush rising on her cheeks. There was no judgment in his tone, only understanding. It was as if he had seen the gray filter all along, and had simply waited patiently for it to lift. "Yes," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I am. Thank you." He tilted his head slightly. "For what?" For the suggestion. For seeing it. For everything." She felt a sudden surge of gratitude, a desire to convey the magnitude of the shift within her. "It's like I've been sleepwalking, and I've just woken up." He simply nodded again, his gaze unwavering, accepting her words without need for further explanation. "Sometimes," he said, "all it takes is a new perspective, or maybe a bit of light." He paused, then gestured with a subtle nod towards the path leading back down the cliff. "The sun's starting to dip. Shall we head back? I can make a pot of tea if you'd like. It's not far from here." The invitation was simple, unadorned, yet it resonated deep within Elara. A pot of tea. A quiet moment. With him. "I'd like that very much," she said, her smile feeling more authentic than any she'd worn in years. As they walked, side by side, down the winding path, the world continued to unfold its colors for Elara. She noticed the intricate patterns of moss on the ancient stone wall, the tiny resilient wildflowers clinging to cracks, the way the setting sun turned the distant ocean into a sheet of hammered copper. She pointed out a particularly vibrant cluster of berries, and he told her their name, rowan berries, and a local superstition about them warding off ill luck. He spoke of the different birds whose calls echoed from the trees, of the history of the lighthouse, of the changing tides. His voice was calm, informative, never demanding, simply sharing. She learned his name was Silas. Silas Thorndat. It suited him, she thought, strong, rooted, a touch of wildness, like the ancient trees. She told him a little more about herself, about her photography, about feeling a bit lost after leaving the city. He listened patiently, his gaze warm and steady, making her feel heard in a way she hadn't for a long time. Silas's cottage was nestled further down the lane from the lighthouse, a stone's throw from the workshop she had glimpsed earlier. It was smaller than Ilara's rented place, but radiated warmth and character. Inside, it was a testament to his craft and his quiet life. Unfinished pieces of wood sat on shelves, their grains polished to a soft sheen. Tools hung neatly on pegs, catching the last of the day's light. Books lined every available surface, their spines worn and faded, hinting at a deep and varied intellectual curiosity. The air smelled faintly of sawdust, beeswax, and something else, wood smoke, perhaps, or the comforting scent of old paper. He ushered her into a small, cozy kitchen where a kettle already sat on a well-loved stove. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, gesturing to a sturdy wooden chair by a small, round table. He moved with an easy grace, his hands, she noticed, capable and strong, yet gentle as he handled the ceramic teapot. Ilara sank into the chair, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over her. She watched him, mesmerized by the quiet rhythm of his movements. He poured the steaming tea into two mismatched mugs, one a deep blue, the other adorned with a stylized lighthouse. He placed a small plate of shortbread biscuits, slightly lopsided but clearly homemade, between them. "My grandmother's recipe," he offered, seeing her glance at the biscuits. "She taught me to bake, among other things." "They look wonderful," Ilara said, taking a sip of the warm, strong tea. It was perfect. "You're a man of many talents, Silas Thorne." He chuckled softly, a low, pleasant sound. "Just a man who likes to keep his hands busy, Ilara, and who appreciates a good cup of tea after a long day." They talked for a while longer about their favorite books, about the simple joys of coastal living, about the challenges of finding one's place in the world. Ilara found herself opening up to him with an ease that surprised her. She spoke of her initial apprehension about moving to Port Blossom, of her fear that she'd just carry her gray filter with her. "It's easy to get caught in a rut," Silas said, stirring his tea. "The world keeps turning, but sometimes we forget to turn with it. A new place, a new rhythm. It can shake things loose." "It certainly has," Ilara agreed, feeling a lightness she hadn't known was possible. "I feel lighter and more aware. It's almost overwhelming in a good way." As dusk deepened and the first stars began to prick the velvet sky, Ilara knew it was time to leave. The thought brought a pang of reluctance, but also a quiet certainty that this wasn't the end of their conversation. "Thank you, Silas," she said, rising from the chair. "For the tea, the biscuits, the company, for everything." He walked her to her car, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of wood smoke from a distant chimney. The stars, unobscured by city lights, blazed with an intensity Ilara had never witnessed. "The stars are particularly bright tonight," she mused. "They often are here," Silas replied, his gaze already lifted towards the heavens. "If you ever want to see them properly without light pollution, I know a few spots, and I have a telescope." Ilara's heart fluttered. "I'd love that," she whispered, meeting his eyes in the dim light. There was an unspoken promise in the air, a gentle anticipation. Driving back to her own little cottage, Ilara felt a profound sense of contentment. The gray filter was well and truly gone. Her new chapter wasn't just beginning. It was already rich with unexpected colors, warm conversations, and the quiet, steady presence of Silas. The following day settled into a comfortable rhythm. Ilara spent her mornings unpacking the last of her boxes, arranging her books, and setting up a small workspace for her camera equipment. She found herself meticulously cleaning her lenses, eager to put her newfound clarity of vision to use. The cottage, once just a rented space, slowly began to feel like home, imbued with her presence and the scent of the fresh sea air she let in through open windows. In the afternoons, she explored Port Blossom. It was a charming, unhurried town, full of independent shops and friendly faces. She discovered a small bakery that made the most exquisite sourdough, a quirky antique shop crammed with forgotten treasures, and a tiny art gallery showcasing local talent. Everyone seemed to know Silas. The bakery owner, a cheerful woman with flour-dusted hands, smiled knowingly when Ilara mentioned his name. "Silas? Oh, he's a good one. Salt of the earth. Does beautiful work, too." Ilara started her photography project. She called it Port Blossom Unveiled. She sought out the hidden beauty of the town and its surroundings, the intricate patterns of rust on an old fishing boat, the play of light on a weathered cottage door, the tenacious grip of ivy on a stone wall. And sometimes, she found herself drawn to Silas's workshop. It was a place of quiet industry, filled with the comforting scent of wood and the rhythmic hum of tools. Silas never seemed surprised to see her, always offering a gentle nod or a small smile as she peered through the doorway. She would watch him work, his strong hands shaping wood with a precision that was almost poetic. He would be engrossed in carving a delicate detail onto a frame, or sanding a table leg to a silken finish. He moved with a quiet focus, his brow furrowed in concentration, yet he was always aware of her presence. One afternoon, as she watched him meticulously chisel a small, intricate bird into a piece of oak, she found herself asking, "What are you making?" "A gift," he said, without looking up, his voice soft. "For a little girl's birthday. Her parents want a mobile for her nursery, with native birds." "It's beautiful," Ilara murmured, watching the tiny feathers take shape under his deft hand. "You have such patience." He finally looked up, a faint smudge of sawdust on his cheek. "It's not patience, Ilara. It's just listening to the wood. It tells you what it wants to be." She spent hours in his workshop over the next few weeks, not just observing, but sometimes just sitting in a corner, sketching or reading, simply enjoying the ambient peace his presence brought. He never pressed her to leave, never rushed her. Sometimes they would talk about his craft, about her photography, about the history of the materials he used. He showed her different types of wood, explaining their grains, their strengths, their individual character. He taught her how to recognize the scent of cedar, the weight of oak, the buttery feel of walnut. One blustery afternoon, she found him struggling with a particularly stubborn piece of timber. He wanted to bend it for a curved chair back, but it was resisting. "It's fighting me today," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe it needs a different approach?" Ilara suggested, surprising herself with her boldness. "Like, maybe it needs to be convinced, not forced?" Silas paused, considering her words. "You might be right," he mused. He put down his tools and walked over to a stack of books, pulling out a thick, worn volume. "There's an old technique, steam bending. It takes time, but it's gentler." He looked at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Would you like to help me set it up?" And so, Ilara found herself assisting him, learning to carefully prepare the wood, to build a makeshift steam box, to monitor the temperature. It was a slow, deliberate process, requiring patience and teamwork. As the wood slowly softened and yielded to the gentle persuasion of the steam, Ilara felt a sense of quiet triumph. They worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing, a comfortable silence punctuated by the hiss of steam and their low voices. That evening, after the wood was finally in its mold, slowly cooling and taking its new shape, Silas invited her for dinner. "It's just a simple stew," he warned. "Nothing fancy." But Ilara thought it was the most delicious stew she'd ever tasted, rich with herbs and vegetables, served with his homemade sourdough. They ate by the crackling fire in his small living room, the autumn chill kept at bay. The conversation flowed easily, from the day's successes with the wood to their shared love for old stories and quiet evenings. Ilara found herself sharing more about her past, not the heavy, sorrowful parts, but the dreams she'd once had, the adventures she'd longed for before life had seemingly dimmed. "You know," she said, looking into the dancing flames, "I used to dream of traveling, of capturing the world through my lens. But then, life got in the way. Or perhaps I just let it." Silas listened, his gaze steady. "It's never too late, Ilara. The world is still out there, and so is your lens. Sometimes, the most important journeys start right where you are." He paused, then added, "And I think you're capturing it beautifully now. I've seen some of your new photographs. They have a light about them that wasn't there before." His words warmed her more than the fire. He had seen her work. He had noticed the change. This quiet, observant man seemed to see right into her soul. As autumn deepened into late November, the coastal winds grew colder, carrying a scent of impending winter. The leaves had mostly fallen, revealing the stark, beautiful skeletons of the trees against the often dramatic sky. Ilara found a renewed passion for her photography, her camera a constant companion. She captured the brooding beauty of the sea on stormy days, the resilience of the local flora, and the quiet dignity of the townspeople. And increasingly, Silas became an unwitting subject. She had images of him absorbed in his work, sawdust clinging to his hair, his hands poised over a piece of wood. She had candid shots of him walking on the beach, his silhouette against a fiery sunset, or standing by the lighthouse, his gaze fixed on the horizon. There was a particular photograph she loved, a close-up of his hands, calloused and strong, gently sanding a small, intricate carving of a bird. The light caught the grain of the wood and the subtle lines on his skin, telling a story of dedication and artistry. She hadn't shown them to him yet, feeling a strange mix of shyness and a desire to keep this secret collection just for herself, for a little while longer. One clear, moonless night, Silas called her. "The conditions are perfect tonight," he said, his voice a low thrum over the phone. "No clouds, no moon. The stars will be magnificent. Remember what I said about the telescope?" Elara's heart leaped. "I remember. I'd love to." He picked her up in his old sturdy Land Rover, its interior smelling faintly of pine and dog, though she hadn't seen a dog with him. They drove to a secluded cove a few miles out of town, a place where the cliffs protected them from the wind, and the light pollution was non-existent. Silas had already set up his impressive telescope, a dark, gleaming instrument pointed towards the heavens. He helped her adjust to the chill, offering her a thick wool blanket and 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate from a thermos. "Look through here," he instructed, his voice soft, close to her ear, as he adjusted the focus. Elara peered into the eyepiece and gasped. The universe exploded before her eyes. The rings of Saturn, crisp and clear, seemed close enough to touch. Then he guided her to the swirling majesty of a distant galaxy, a hazy cloud of countless stars, and then to the intricate dance of Jupiter's moons. Each revelation was more breathtaking than the last. She felt impossibly small, yet profoundly connected to something vast and eternal. "It's incredible, Silas," she breathed, pulling away from the eyepiece, her eyes shining. "It's like looking into infinity." "It is," he agreed, his own gaze lost in the star-strewn sky. "And it puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? Our worries, our little lives. They're just tiny specks in this grand cosmic ballet." They spent hours under the blanket of stars, talking in hushed tones, sharing observations and comfortable silences. Silas, usually quiet, opened up about his fascination with astronomy, explaining constellations, telling ancient myths, and sharing scientific facts with equal passion. Elara found herself sharing her own dreams again, not just of travel, but of truly seeing and capturing the essence of things, of finding beauty in the ordinary. "You," she said eventually, nestling deeper into the blanket. "I think I've been looking for something for a long time, something to make me feel alive again. And I think I'm finding it here, with you, with you." The words hung in the crisp night air, potent and sincere. Silas turned his head slowly, his eyes, reflecting the starlight, finding hers. A profound tenderness settled between them. He reached out, his warm hand gently covering hers, which rested on the blanket between them. His thumb stroked her knuckles lightly. The gesture was simple, yet it sent a shiver through Elara, a warmth that spread through her entire being. "I think," Silas said, his voice a low murmur, "that you were always alive, Elara. You just needed a clear sky to remind you how brightly you shine." His words, his touch, filled her with an emotion so pure, so deep, that it brought tears to her eyes. This was more than just attraction. It was a soul-deep recognition, a feeling of coming home. As the first hint of dawn began to paint the eastern horizon with soft pastels, they packed up the telescope. The air was colder now, but Elara felt warm, cherished. He drove her back to her cottage, the silence between them comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "Thank you, Silas," she whispered as they pulled up to her door. "Tonight was magical." He smiled, a gentle, almost shy smile. "The pleasure was all mine, Elara. I hope we can do it again soon." "Me too," she agreed, her hand lingering on the car door handle. She wanted to say more, to tell him how much his presence meant to her, how he had brought light back into her world. But the words seemed too big, too overwhelming for the quiet hour. Instead, she simply met his gaze, letting her feelings shine through her eyes. He returned her gaze, a profound warmth in his hazel eyes. "Good night, Elara." "Good night, Silas." She watched him drive away, her heart full. Walking into her cottage, the space suddenly felt less empty, infused with the memory of the stars, his quiet presence, and the lingering warmth of his hand. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that this new chapter, this vibrant, colorful story, was only just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The following morning, Elara felt a renewed energy. The conversation under the stars, Silas's gentle touch, his insightful words, they had all woven themselves into the fabric of her being, making her feel more grounded, more truly herself than she had in years. She decided it was time to share her secret collection of photographs with him. She spent the morning carefully selecting and printing a few of her favorite images of Silas and his workshop. She chose the one of his hands, the one of his silhouette by the lighthouse, and a candid shot of him laughing softly as he explained a tool. She framed them simply, using some of the smooth, unvarnished wood offcuts she'd found in his workshop, which she had gently sanded and polished herself. Later that afternoon, she walked over to his workshop, her heart thrumming with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She found him at his workbench, meticulously carving intricate details into the small wooden birds for the mobile. The room smelled of fresh wood and beeswax. "Silas," she said softly, stepping inside. He looked up, his expression softening as he saw her. "Elara, good to see you. Just finishing up these little fellows." He held up a tiny, exquisitely carved swallow. "They're beautiful," she said, genuinely admiring his work. I brought something for you." She held out the small bundle of framed photographs. Silas wiped his hands on a cloth, then took the frames from her, his brow furrowed in curiosity. As he looked at each one, a slow smile spread across his face, a genuine, unguarded smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He paused longest on the photograph of his hands. "You took these?" he asked, his voice quiet, filled with wonder. When? Over the past few weeks, she admitted, a blush rising on her cheeks. "I hope you don't mind. You're a very compelling subject." He shook his head, still smiling. "Mind? No, Elara. They're extraordinary. You've captured something I didn't even know was there." He looked up at her, his hazel eyes warm and deep. "Especially this one," he said, holding up the picture of his hands. "You see things, don't you? Things others miss." "I try to," she said, meeting his gaze. "You taught me how to see again, Silas." He set the frames down carefully on his workbench, then stepped closer to her. The air between them crackled with an unspoken energy. He reached out, his strong, gentle hand cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed softly over her skin, sending a wave of warmth through her. "And you, Elara," he murmured, his gaze holding hers captive. "You've shown me the world through new eyes, too. A world that feels a little brighter, a little more full, with you in it." His words were a soft caress, a promise whispered on the autumn air. Elara leaned into his touch, her heart soaring. In that moment, surrounded by the scent of wood and the quiet hum of his workshop, under the unwavering gaze of this kind, steady man, she knew that the gray filter was not just lifted, but shattered. Her world was vibrant, alive, and brimming with the promise of a love as deep and true as the ancient trees and the endless star-strewn sky. The next chapter was unfolding, rich with possibility, and she was ready for every beautiful, heartwarming page. Liam's thumb stroked the back of her hand, a simple gesture that sent a jolt of warmth through Flora. His gaze was tender, a silent mirror of her own burgeoning feelings. "Flora," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her, "you have no idea how much I've hoped for this. For gosh, He leaned in, slowly, giving her ample time to respond. Her eyes fluttered closed as his lips met hers. A soft, gentle connection that deepened into a tender, lingering kiss. It was not a kiss of fire and passion, but of deep, quiet understanding, of two souls finding their way home. It tasted of sawdust and something uniquely Liam, something safe and infinitely comforting. When they finally parted, a soft sigh escaped her, and a radiant smile bloomed on her face. "I think I do," she whispered, her voice a little shaky, but full of joy. "I think I feel it too." The next few weeks were a dream woven into the fabric of everyday life. Their dates weren't grand or elaborate, but steeped in the simple, profound pleasure of shared moments. They walked through the autumn woods, crunching leaves underfoot, Flora pointing out the subtle shifts in color, Liam identifying trees by their bark and branching patterns. They cooked together in his cozy kitchen, the air filling with the scent of herbs and laughter, Liam patiently teaching her how to properly chop an onion, Flora teasing him about his slightly over-seasoned stew. Flora found herself spending more and more time at his workshop, not just observing, but learning. Liam, with his patient hands, showed her how to sand wood until it was silken smooth, how to identify different grains, the satisfaction of a perfectly fitted joint. In return, she shared her knowledge of glazes and firing temperatures, the magic of transforming raw clay into something beautiful and enduring. They were two artists, speaking different languages, yet finding common ground in the creation of beauty. She also introduced him to her own creative haven, her pottery studio. Liam watched, fascinated, as she centered clay on the wheel, her hands moving with a graceful precision that mesmerized him. He saw the intensity in her eyes as she envisioned a form, the quiet joy as it took shape under her touch. His steady presence in her studio, the way he'd simply watch, offering quiet encouragement, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't before. The gray filter that had once muted her world was not just gone. It had been replaced by a kaleidoscope of vibrant hues, each day painted with a new shade of happiness. One crisp Saturday morning, as they sipped coffee on his porch, watching the mist rise from the valley, Flora found herself sharing a deeper part of her past. "After everything," she began, her voice soft, "it felt like my passion for pottery dimmed. It became a chore, something I had to do, not something I loved. I almost gave it up entirely." She paused, tracing the rim of her mug. "Coming here, meeting you, it's like I've rediscovered it. I look at a lump of clay now and I see possibility again, not just work." Liam reached across the small table, covering her hand with his. "That's because you are a possibility, Flora. You always were. Sometimes it just takes the right light to see it." His words were simple, yet profound, touching a place deep within her heart. He didn't try to fix it, just acknowledged it, and in doing so, he healed a tiny, lingering ache she hadn't even realized was there. Their relationship wasn't without its gentle challenges, mostly internal for Flora. There were moments, fleeting and rare, when the old anxieties would try to creep back in, the fear of being hurt, the worry that this perfect happiness was too good to last. But Liam, with his calm demeanor and unwavering presence, always dispelled them. He had a way of grounding her, of anchoring her to the present moment, to the quiet certainty of their shared connection. One evening, after a particularly fulfilling day of working on a new series of mugs for a local cafe, a commission she'd landed thanks to Liam's enthusiastic recommendation, Flora found herself looking at her small, charming cottage. It felt a little empty now when she thought of Liam's presence. She often stayed at his place, waking to the scent of coffee and pine, but she treasured her own space too. "Liam," she said thoughtfully, as they sat by her fireplace, a crackling warmth filling the room, "do you ever think about the future? About where all of this is going?" He set down his mug, his eyes meeting hers, serious but warm. "Every single day, Flora. And what I see, what I hope for, it's a future with you in it, in every single part of it." He paused, then continued, a slight vulnerability in his voice. "I'm not a man of many words, you know that, but I've never felt this way before. This completeness, it's like a piece of me I didn't know was missing has finally found its way home." Flora's heart swelled, tears pricking at her eyes. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed to hear those words, to know that his feelings ran as deep and true as her own. She scooted closer to him on the rug, resting her head on his shoulder. "Me too, Liam. Home, that's exactly it." Their deepening connection wasn't just about emotional intimacy, it extended to their crafts. Liam started sketching designs for wooden handles and lids that could complement Flora's ceramic jars and teapots. Flora, in turn, experimented with new glazes inspired by the colors of the forest surrounding Liam's home. They decided to combine their talents for the upcoming Harvest Festival and Artisan Fair in Cedar Creek. It was a big step, a public declaration of their partnership, both creative and personal. The weeks leading up to the fair were a flurry of activity. Their respective workshops became shared spaces, a vibrant hum of creativity filling the air. Flora painstakingly threw and fired a new line of mugs, bowls, and platters, each piece imbued with the warmth of autumn colors, deep russets, golden ochres, and muted forest greens. Liam, with his characteristic precision, crafted intricate wooden spoons, cutting boards, and delicate wooden bases for her vases, ensuring each piece was not just functional, but a work of art. One afternoon, Flora watched him carve a small wooden bird, its wings outstretched, seemingly caught mid-flight. "What's that for?" she asked, intrigued by the delicate details emerging under his skilled hands. He looked up, a soft smile gracing his lips. "Just a little something. I had an idea for a display for your smaller pieces. Something to make them truly sing." The day of the fair dawned crisp and clear, the autumn air invigorating. They set up their stall together, a harmonious blend of Flora's earthy ceramics and Liam's rich, natural wood creations. Liam had indeed crafted a stunning display, a tiered wooden stand, beautifully proportioned, and at the very top, perched as if ready to take flight, was the carved wooden bird. It held a tiny, perfectly formed ceramic bird bath Flora had made, and a small, vibrant succulent sat within. It was elegant, striking, and uniquely Ioanam. "Liam, it's beautiful," Flora breathed, her eyes shining with admiration. "It's absolutely perfect." Their combined stall quickly became a focal point of the fair. People were drawn to the synergy of their work, the way the ceramics and wood complemented each other, each enhancing the other's beauty. Flora found herself effortlessly engaging with customers, her passion for her craft shining through, while Liam, though still reserved, spoke with quiet pride about the origins of his wood and the stories behind his pieces. They worked together seamlessly, a silent rhythm flowing between them as they handled sales, answered questions, and shared smiles. Mid-afternoon, as the fair was bustling, a small crisis struck. One of Flora's most intricate, delicate ceramic bowls, a piece she had poured her heart into, slipped from a customer's hand and shattered on the ground. A gasp went through the crowd, and Flora's heart lurched. For a terrifying second, the old gray filter threatened to descend, the feeling of vulnerability and loss washing over her. But before she could fully succumb, Liam was there. He knelt beside her, his hand on her arm, his gaze steady and reassuring. "It's all right, Flora," he murmured, his voice calm amidst the sudden hush. "Accidents happen. It's just clay." He helped her gather the broken pieces, his presence a solid anchor in her momentary distress. Then, he turned to the mortified customer, his voice gentle. "No harm done. We understand. These things happen." His calm diffused the tension, and the customer, though still apologetic, was visibly relieved. Later, after the fair had wound down and they were packing up, Flora looked at the bag of shattered ceramic pieces. "I spent days on that bowl," she said, a lingering pang in her chest. Liam took the bag from her, his fingers brushing hers. "I know you did, and it was magnificent, but you know what? You can make another one, even more beautiful." And sometimes, he added, a thoughtful glint in his eyes, broken pieces can be repurposed. They can be part of something new, something beautiful in a different way. Something beautiful in a different way. He didn't elaborate, but the idea intrigued her. His steady optimism was a balm to her soul. The success of the fair cemented their collaboration, both personally and professionally. Orders poured in for their combined pieces, and their names became synonymous with quality and artistry in Cedar Creek. They started discussing larger projects, a shared studio space, even the possibility of Flora moving some of her things into his home. The idea thrilled her, yet also brought a flutter of nerves. It was a big step, a step towards truly merging their lives. One evening, a few weeks after the fair, Liam surprised her. He had been unusually quiet and a little mysterious for days. He led her into his workshop, which was meticulously clean, a rare sight. In the center, under a carefully draped cloth, was something new. "Close your eyes," he instructed, his voice soft, a hint of excitement in it. Flora obeyed, her heart thrumming with anticipation. She felt him remove the cloth, then heard a soft, familiar chime. "Open them," she gasped. On the workbench, nestled on a bed of dark, polished wood, was a breathtaking wind chime. But it wasn't just any wind chime. The chimes themselves were ceramic, exquisitely crafted by Liam, each one a different shape and size, glazed in subtle, harmonious tones of blue and green. And suspended from the center, acting as the wind catcher, was a small, perfectly mended ceramic bird, its delicate wing pieced together with shimmering gold dust. Kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer, treating breakage and repair as part of the history of an object, rather than something to disguise. It was the bird from the fair, the one he had carved and she had made the bird bath for. He had taken the broken pieces of the bird bath and created something new, something even more meaningful. Liam. Flora's voice was thick with emotion. She reached out, her fingers tracing the golden lines on the little bird. You did, the kintsugiin. He nodded, his gaze tender. You said sometimes broken pieces can be part of something new, something beautiful in a different way. I wanted to show you that even when things break, they can be made whole again, and sometimes, even more precious because of the journey. Like us, Flora. Like finding beauty after the gray. Tears streamed down Flora's face, but they were tears of pure joy, of profound understanding. This was not just a gift, it was a metaphor for their journey, for her own healing, for the love they had built. He took her hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. Flora, I don't want to imagine a life without you anymore. I want to wake up to your smile every day. I want to share every success, every challenge, every quiet moment of peace. I want to build a life with you right here in Cedar Creek, amongst the trees and the quiet hum of our workshops. He knelt before her, not with a ring, but with the steady, unwavering certainty that was so uniquely him. Flora, Evergreen, will you make this your home? Flora didn't hesitate. Her heart felt so full, it might burst. Yes, Liam, 1,000 times yes. He rose, pulling her into a fierce, joyful embrace. Their kiss was deep and true, sealing their promise under the gentle chime of the newly created wind chime, its ceramic tones singing a melody of hope and enduring love. Their wedding was a reflection of them, intimate, natural, and deeply personal. They chose a clearing in the very woods where they had first walked together, the ancient trees standing as silent witnesses. Flora wore a simple, elegant gown adorned with delicate lace that echoed the patterns of nature. Her bouquet was a collection of wildflowers gathered from the surrounding meadows. Liam, handsome and steadfast in a tailored suit, watched her walk towards him, his eyes shining with a love that spoke volumes. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises of companionship, resilience, and a love that would grow and deepen with each passing season. Flora promised to bring color and light to his steady world. Liam promised to be her unwavering anchor, her quiet strength. Their reception was held at his home, the workshop transformed into a magical space adorned with fairy lights, their combined creations serving as decorations, ceramic bowls filled with wildflowers, wooden platters laden with local delicacies, the kintsugi wind chime hanging proudly from the porch, chiming softly in the breeze. Friends and family, a close-knit group, gathered to celebrate their union, the air alive with laughter, good food, and the warmth of genuine connection. Life with Liam was everything Flora had dreamed of and more. They built a small addition to his cottage, a light-filled studio for Flora, where she could create her pottery with the forest as her backdrop, just steps away from Liam's woodworking haven. Their days fell into a comfortable rhythm of shared meals, creative pursuits, and quiet evenings by the fire, reading or simply enjoying each other's company. Flora's pottery business flourished, invigorated by her renewed passion and Liam's unwavering support. He helped her with the practicalities, building her custom shelves and display stands, even helping with deliveries. In turn, Flora brought a vibrant energy to his world, encouraging him to explore new designs, to showcase his beautiful work more widely. Their shared studio became a hub of creativity, a testament to their combined artistry and love. The gray filter was now a distant memory, a faint shadow from a past life. Flora's world was not just vibrant, it was radiant, infused with the golden glow of love, friendship, and belonging. She often found herself smiling for no reason, simply because the sun was shining, or a bird was singing, or because she caught Liam's eye across the room and saw the profound love reflected there. One evening, years after their wedding, as they sat on their porch, the kintsugi wind chime singing its gentle song in the twilight, Flora rested her head on Liam's shoulder. The air was cool, scented with pine and damp earth, and above them, the stars began to pepper the darkening sky. "Remember that day in the workshop?" she whispered, a soft smile on her lips. "When I told you the gray filter was gone?" Liam chuckled, a deep, contented sound. "How could I forget? It was the day I knew my life was about to change forever." He squeezed her hand. "You brought so much color into my world, Flora. So much light." She looked up at him, her heart overflowing. And you, Liam, you gave me the grounding I needed, the stillness, the peace, the unwavering truth. You showed me that even after a storm, the forest can grow back stronger, more beautiful than before. He kissed the top of her head, his touch gentle, reassuring. The ceramic chimes sang their melody, a symphony of their journey, their healing, their enduring love. Under the endless, star-strewn sky, surrounded by the deep, true love of a kind, steady man, Flora knew she had found her forever home. Her story, rich with possibility, had unfolded into the most beautiful, heartwarming pages imaginable, a testament to a love as deep and true as the ancient trees and the endless, star-strewn sky. And as she drifted off to sleep, nestled safely in Liam's arms, she knew their next chapter would be just as magical, filled with the quiet joy of a love that had truly come home.